Hey there survivors, Black here from CasaBLACK Gaming, and today I'm giving my review of the time I have played in Return to Moria. First up, I wanted to say that I played the beta test in September and I was accepted into their content creator program and given a copy of the game. But I was not in any way asked to review or say anything specific about this game, and am free to do whatever I wish with my content without any interference from the game devs. My second little bit of a caveat here is that yes, I am a huge Lord of the Rings fan, having been a huge fan of the books, movies, and many games over the years, including but not limited to playing Lord of the Rings online for many years, with that time dating back to 2008. Now, my third little caveat here is that I am also a huge survival game fan, having started my channel as a survival game guides channel back in 2015. I have played thousands of hours of games like Ark Survival Evolved, Conan Exiles, Valheim, Atlas, Minecraft, and many of the other smaller games in between, so I am coming at this game with quite the hefty resume and was beyond stoked to hear of this project when it was announced, as it was the very idea that I had many years back when I first got into survival games, when I thought it would be the coolest thing in the world to have a survival game set inside of a mountain with a voxel environment where you mine for valuables, uncover enemies in the deep, and build amazing breathtaking bases and cities that Durin himself would be proud to call home. Even if I never envisioned the Lord of the Rings IP as doing something like this, I still had that very same vision. So with that intro into my gaming pedigree done, let's go ahead and dive into this honest review. So this is one of the hardest reviews I have ever had to do. My intro was longer than usual because I wanted to preface what I'm about to write so people who do not know me or my style of video do not think I'm just trying to bag on a game for views. In fact, I had decided not to even buy the game based on my time in the beta because last month it was pretty evident that the game was not one that I would enjoy, nor could I endorse it. I had planned on fully supporting this game, having made new overlays and the theme music running in the background, with the desire to offer up guides on how to play and hopefully to show off some cool base designs and tips. This was not how I envisioned this review to go, but since I did hype it up months ago and was sent a free copy, I decided to give it a go and even bought a copy for my wife to play along with me because maybe it could be more fun with a second person. Now, I will not go through a play-by-play of our time, but I will just say that the things that made my time in the beta not enjoyable were still present. So where to begin? The survival mechanics are they're just not very well implemented. The UI and process of doing everything from cooking to smelting to building is just not intuitive, and a step backward even from many survival games from 5 to 7 years ago. I would fully expect a survival game from 2023 to have at least copied from the best of those, whether that be Valheim's building or just about any other game's UI, and how to move about and navigate your used items more efficiently. It's not just the survival mechanics or UI, but also the combat is pretty much dead feeling and super repetitive, and the enemy AI leaves much to be desired, with many just standing around waiting for their turn like some badly choreographed action flick from the 70s. The various areas look awesome, and I apologize for not having more variety in my footage here, but I simply could not bring myself to play more than a couple of hours this time after having spent time in the beta and that footage gone due to the game devs' kind of strict policies with their beta having a watermark floating all around, so I trashed that footage, which I was not supposed to capture at all per their rules. But anyway, now speaking of those nice areas that they have, while the map does open up a bit more, the game never truly feels like a sprawling landscape as other procedurally generated landscapes do, whether that be Valheim or like Minecraft. In fact, this is probably the worst use of procedurally generated landscaping that I've ever seen. This game could have actually used a static handcrafted map, which could have added so much more detail instead of the copy-pasted cave sections you see throughout this game. The randomness also kind of hurts many early level players, with resources being scarce and hard to come by at times. Now, speaking of early level players, an issue we noticed in the beta testing was just how varied and sometimes egregious the raids on your base could be. It did not feel as bad as it did in the beta, where you could literally get like 15 to 20 enemies back to back to back attacking your base within a few minutes. It still happens more often than is liked by many new players. The difficulty here can be enticing for some players, but also if your resources are limited and you do not know how to move on and build up another settlement deeper in, instead of doing what many survival game players have grown accustomed to, which is just to set up your first base and get comfortable before moving on, then you might end up with some frustrated players who decide to just refund this game before their 2 hours even runs out. So last month, when I and others were in the beta, for the most part, it felt like more of a friends and family event where the bulk of the invites are people who were just die-hard Tolkien fans, but not necessarily experienced survival game players. I saw far more praise for this game than it honestly deserved. While yes, it was cool to give praise for what was done right, most of the complaints I saw were of people complaining about the character creation and not having enough options for various things like the metal tassels in their beards or hair. Meanwhile, a small minority of us were vocal in saying we thought the game needed more time before it was launched. There were, and I believe still are, issues with the save file being corrupted at times. There are noticeable lag spikes during combat and other certain parts of the game. Even yesterday on launch day, a message on their official Discord discussed issues they knew about and to which had been reported in the beta, such as the long load times and furnace countdown, and yet they went ahead with a full release on a game that feels more like an early access title. I think if it were launched as an early access game, then most of what I'm saying here would be moot and expected. The thing that sort of pisses me off the most about this is that we don't get many Lord of the Rings games, and the two that we have gotten this year have been just not great, to put it lightly. Companies will get the wrong idea here and think the IP isn't worth creating games for, when that is not the truth. We just need more good games. Speaking of which, there is a Weta game coming out that's going to be placed in the Shire. Looks like a cozy farm sim. That one looks like it could be cool as well, but you know, I'll remain skeptical. Anyway, speaking of good games though, I tested another new survival game last month right before this one, and that one set the stage for this game's demise. That game is Enshrouded. Now, both of these games were announced around the same time, and if you had told me then that the Moria game would be far inferior to that game, I would have called you mad, but Enshrouded is one of the best survival games to come along in a while, and it also has a voxel-based base building, and is not limited in scale and scope of your building like Return to Moria is. In fact, it is where I will be building the Moria base of my dreams, albeit without the ability of being a dwarf, or the wonderful lore, but still, I've had more fun in the weekend that I got to play that game than the more time I've played with Return to Moria. Now, I cannot end this review on a sour note. I will quickly talk about what the devs did right here. The game feels like a Lord of the Rings game, although just not as huge as what I've experienced Moria in with Lord of the Rings Online. The character creation is very decent, and the characters' movements, climbing, and overall look is well done. Their singing while they work is revolutionary, and I can really appreciate the time they spent on nailing the lore right, and it was so nice to hear John Rhys-Davies as Gimli again. I just wish all of that effort had gone into making a great survival game that I could get thousands of hours of playtime in. As it is, I cannot play this game anymore. For those who enjoy this game, I will not begrudge you, but for me, it is one of the all-time biggest letdowns of any game I have ever anticipated. Thank you for listening, and please be respectful as you comment down below.